Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Our first speaker for today is Reinhard Laubenbacher, and he will talk to us about the legacy of IMAG MSM working group in digital twins research. And we look forward to hearing from Reinhard. Thank you very much. Look forward to it.
First of all, I really want to thank the organizers of this conference for putting this together. It's incredibly timely, and it allows us to collectively look back at an initiative that I think turned out to be immensely influential in a number of ways, and James alluded to some of them. So since I was part of it from the very beginning, I thought maybe I could start with a little bit of a description of how this all came about, and what other things it spawned and influenced. In particular, it influenced profoundly my own research program, and I'll take an opportunity to talk about that a little bit, and then end up with maybe a bigger picture and where we are and where we need to go. So this really started with, I think, many conversations that James and I had in the summer of 2020, in the most gloomy days of the pandemic. I was sitting in my home office in Connecticut at the time, and James and I talked about the vision for this workshop and science in general, the world in general, where they were all going to burn up in a little bit. So it was an interesting time, and the working group very quickly, grew to over 200 members. A lot of people contributed. So it was quite a surprise for me, certainly. So let me. So here's IMAG. That's what was established based on a proposal that James and I, with input of many other people, put together, presented to the IMAG MSM consortium, and it was approved. One of the early things, as James already pointed out, was this perspective we wrote. It helped us a lot to kind of formalize our own ideas. Certainly for me, at that time, digital twins were sort of fairly newer than they are today. And one of the things that was very unclear was, what is a digital twin? Much more unclear than it is today. It's many more people thought, well, digital twins are just models, and I think we understand better now what the difference is, and how incredibly challenging it is to go from a model to an actual digital twin. And I've augmented the picture that James put up. It's a figure out of this perspective we wrote, by adding an actual end user of a digital twin, and I want to come back to that at the very end of my presentation. So one of the things that happened is this working group. So we had lots of people with lots of ideas. We developed some subgroups that worked on different things. There were many publications that came out of it, many really great discussions. We had many really great presentations where I met a lot of people, some of them here on the program and many others not. So we worked, one of the first things is we worked on a sort of perspective paper, and it was an incredible experience that I'd never had quite like this, that you have essentially a dozen people who sort of put things in a Google Doc, and then the idea is we were going to collectively fashion that into a coherent paper that had something to say. So it was an interesting process to go through. I think it's a paper that has ultimately gotten quite a bit of attention, and I think had some really good ideas in it. So from there, one of the things that came out of it was, James already alluded to it, was an event in 2023. It was a 2-day event that I co-organized at the University of Florida. We have a campus in Orlando and Lake Nona, just outside of the Orlando airport. The conference or the meeting was supported generously by Virginia Paysauer, the program officer of the U.S. Army Research Office, the biomathematics program. And that brought together about 20 people from around the world, each of which gave their view of digital twins, where we are, what they were doing. And the way the presentations went is there was essentially a 15, 20-minute presentation, and then there were 40 minutes of discussion. So it was somewhat different. I think it was very productive. And we made careful, high-quality recordings of all these sessions. And if you go to the website that's at the bottom, you will find all of these recordings. You can watch them. I'm happy to, if you email me, I'm happy to share all those slides so you can get the URLs. And that was, to me, it was a really important view of where the field is. There were some people who had basically had a functioning digital twin or were very close to a functioning digital twin. One of the participants was Tom Yankeloff. He will talk later on, I think today, about his work and some others. And then there are others who had a platform to do this, but it was very, very instructive. And there were two publications that came out of this. One James already put up. The first one is a meeting report. The other one was some use cases. There too, what happened is we were trying to write a paper, 20 people together in a Google Doc that ended up getting very, very large, very complex. And we ended up, it turns out one could split it up in a really meaningful way into two separate papers. So those are available and are companions to the videos. And I would really encourage you to look at the videos. I've talked to just recently to one person who said her lab was sort of systematically working through the different recordings to get a bigger picture of where the field is. So there's that. Then in the process of writing this first roadmap paper, one of the people we included was Anna Niarakis. She had given us a talk about her phenomenal disease map project in Europe, where she brought together a large community to work together and write a paper. And then Anna, who was at the time at Paris-Saclay in university, and on their campus is the Institut Pascal that funds workshops and conferences. And there was an opportunity to apply for a workshop there. And we did, and the workshop was funded, and it turned into, I think, a phenomenal event. It was a 3-week workshop that brought together close to 100 people, ranging from students to senior faculty, from modelers to experimentalists to clinicians. And the people came from, I think, 15 different countries. And it was just an amazing event that that again helped certainly me and I think many other people clarify where the field is, what it needs, and what it is we can most importantly contribute. And what grew out of this Paris workshop, there were continuing discussions among the members. There are several papers that came out of this, one that appeared just recently in immunoinformatics. But the other thing that happened is very largely due to Anna's, it seems, never-ending energy, is we're now a formal working group on building immune digital twins from the Research Data Alliance, a large international organization that was funded in, I think, 2013, maybe with funding from the European Commission, the National Science Foundation, and several other places. And so this continues. We're building, databases of immune-relevant models. We're building interfaces, user-directed interfaces. So a number of very cool things that happen there. And all of these, this certainly is something that anybody can join. If you're interested in joining, that would be a great thing. So those are some of the things that came out of this. The IMAG MSM working group and these other initiatives turned into sort of a large international group of people. I met many people that I didn't know through this venue. I had new collaborations, and I think that's what happened to many others. And of course, what happened after that is that James and Tom spun out Glimprint, which is complementary but separate to the IMAG MSM working group, and I think that will serve as a nucleus and drive the further development of this community that's focused on using modeling focused on the immune system to develop digital twins for diseases and conditions that involve the immune system. Now, as James alluded, one of the things that happened, a really important one, is a report that came out in 2023 by a committee that was put together by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine to focus on opportunities and challenges, foundational opportunities and challenges around digital twins. And one of the things that this report did is it posited a specific definition of digital twin, and the definition is captured in this figure, which is probably the most cited figure from this report for sure. And this is now referred to as the NASEM loop for National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and is increasingly becoming the accepted definition. And I'll say something in just a little bit. There was a workshop maybe a couple of weeks ago, a 2-day virtual workshop of the National Institute for Heart, Lung, and Blood at the NIH on digital twins. And that was explicitly, this definition, the NASEM loop, was explicitly adopted as the definition of a digital twin. And I see a little bit later, Charlie Taylor will talk. He was also a presenter at that workshop. So, and as James said, a number of us, through presentations we gave in workshops leading up to this, through contributions to writing efforts, I think the ideas that the IMAG MSM working group developed had a significant influence on how that report came out, and it now really drives a lot of things. It drives, it focuses a lot of discussions, and I think we'll have a significant continued influence. So that's sort of a bit of the history as I've participated in it from my point of view. And let me just reiterate, it was, for me, it was the really first time that I experienced such a coming together of such a large, enthusiastic, and energetic community that really can help formulate an important but at the time vague idea. And this is going to lead to, I think, a major contribution to medicine and healthcare. So as I said earlier, one of the things that happened is my own research program got influenced quite a bit and quite profoundly. And a lot of what I do has really pivoted to looking at digital twins. So what I'd like to do, let me just make sure this is what I want. Yes. What I would like to do is just in a few minutes tell you a bit about some of the work that we have done in this context, and I'm putting them sort of on top of this NASEM loop. And I should maybe let me just not everybody is maybe familiar with this NASEM loop, so let me just reiterate this definition. So a digital twin is one part of a two-part entity. So you have the physical part of the twins. So this is in the case of medicine, it's a patient or some part of a patient. And then there is a virtual representation of that patient. That's the model, typically, some underlying computational model that captures some aspect of a patient's biology and relevant to a particular application. So one of the points that this NASEM report makes is that digital twins need to be fit for purpose. You need to start with a purpose. So one way to think about this, if you look back at the figure I had from our perspective in science, you can think of a digital twin project as essentially a bench to bedside project. You start well, you would start at the bedside with a particular application in mind. For example, you want to stabilize a patient's blood pressure who is in an ICU with sepsis. And what model is needed, what data are needed, how do I put them together? Do I have all the human biology? If not, can I go into the lab and put this together? So it's really a bench to bedside kind of project that ties together the physical counterpart with the virtual representation. And the other key ingredient to be a sort of a bona fide, a full-fledged digital twin is these bidirectional connections. On the one hand, you go from the physical counterpart to the virtual representation, which means you take a model and you calibrate it to a patient from patient-derived data. That could be blood draws, data obtained from blood draws. It could be imaging. It could be the patient's electronic health records, any number of things. And you use all this information to calibrate a model and to dynamically recalibrate it as this patient progresses. As Gary always emphasizes, the patient at time A is different from the patient at time B. And the virtual twin needs to reflect that. And then you have the interaction in the other way. You want to now use the virtual representation to help you design interventions in the trajectory of a patient, whether it is an attempt to make a sick patient healthy or whether it is an attempt to keep a healthy patient healthy. There are certain interventions. So from the point of view of sort of mathematics or engineering, it's, we need to solve control problems going from right to left. And once you put all of those together, then what you have is a digital twin. And as the NASEM report makes clear, there are very few actual digital twins out there that are operational. And there's a lot of aspirational work, and there's a lot of hype. So one needs to be able to separate those out. Okay, so let me move on now to tell you a bit about our own work. We have, for a long time, we've worked on lung infections, starting with fungal infections. We've then moved on to viral infections, in particular SARS-CoV-2, and we work on bacterial infections with a model organism, Klebsiella, that is a common organism that's causing hospital-acquired infections. And so we've done a lot of the biology. So for example, in the upper right, you see a paper that looks at the role of iron in infection severity. And I should say at the very beginning, our initial goal was to address the following issue. Or I guess all the main approaches to treating patients with fungal respiratory infections, invasive aspergillosis, or other fungal infections with antifungals. So compounds that affect the fungus, say maybe weaken or destroy its cell wall. And just like with antibiotics, most antifungals in many cases now become ineffective. And so our goal was to see if we could identify patient-centric interventions that one could do to help a patient fight this infection. It's fungal infection in particular are mostly affecting immunocompromised patients. And so the idea was, can we strengthen the immune system in some way or make the load on the immune system lighter? And so we focused on the role of iron as a driver of severity. We've done a number of experimental studies. On the upper left, you see again, something focused on a molecule that's synthesized by the liver. It's hemopexin that scavenges heme, and heme, of course, is the major supplier of iron in an infected lung. We've built a model in the middle right. We've built a model of all this, a multiscale agent-based model that captures the immune response. And that model we use to study what the role of hemopexin might be, how one might be able to modify it and make it more effective. So that was an effort at sort of basic biology, which has, in the meantime, really been refocused into a digital twin type effort. We've also focused on just the two interactions going one way or another. We recently published we published one paper on how to personalize computational models from data, so data assimilation. Essentially, that's at the top center. So a recent paper on the bottom. We have you see two examples of papers that look at how one can use, in particular, agent-based models for optimal control. And both of these papers focus on, among other things, using artificial intelligence techniques combined with mechanistic models to accomplish that. We've done some work on sort of creating the foundation for a platform, basically, that would allow us to integrate all of this. You see a few papers at the bottom that focus on standards. If you look at what industry does, how digital twins in industry are done, one key ingredient in all of them is that you have standards, you have standardized models, standardized platforms, and so on. We have the middle paper, a modular computational framework for medical digital twins that basically looks at what are architectures that one can use to make models interoperable, to put them together into larger models. I've put biomodels in the lower right here. We'll hear from Sharif later on, I think today or tomorrow. Sharif is the main developer of biomodels. And it plays an important role as a repository of many curated models. There's over 1,000 curated models with 2,700 models altogether. And for example, the RDA working group is building a database of immune-relevant models that will be developed within biomodels as if you like, a sub-database. And I should mention biomodels. Recently, migrated here to the University of Florida. So together with Sharif, we'll be operating it from here. So that's some of the things we've done. I have here a slide which, in the interest of time, maybe I'll say very little about. That is an actual digital twin project by my colleague TJ Segal, who many of you know. He's been working with clinicians here and at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville and at the University of Virginia to put together a digital twin that helps control blood pressure for septic ICU patients. And the initial goal is to forecast what blood pressure will do, what mean arterial pressure will do over a period of time to see whether a patient is likely to experience a collapse in blood pressure, and then how one can use standard interventions like administering fluids or administering drugs to prevent that from happening. And what's interesting about this is that TJ can do this in two ways. One is essentially using Gaussian processes to do the forecasting, but he also has an approach that uses a mechanistic hemodynamics model to do a similar kind of forecasting with similar kinds of results. It's somewhat slower, but it actually provides an insight into specific mechanisms that are at work for that particular patient. Okay, so those are some of the work some of the work we've done. Just to thank all my colleagues in the lab, our collaborator Borna Merat, who does all the immunology work, and the funding that over the years has supported this work. So what I want to do in the last few minutes I have is I want to just step back a bit and say, what is it we need to do to turn this technology into something that can be deployed and developed at scale. The situation today is essentially that digital twins are one-off projects. There's a lot of companies, for example, that develop what one might call digital twins, but they're one-off approaches, and everybody who does it kind of needs to reinvent the wheel. That's not a scalable approach. That does not lead to an industry that supports digital twin technology. And I've listed here just a few things that we need. We need a computational and IT infrastructure. And these are things that I think of when I read what industry does and what industry has available. And I think so standards, formats, best practices, I think are really, really important. We need libraries of models that are interoperable and that are reproducible and credible. And we need a platform to take this whole NASEM loop, and we plug in a particular patient, we plug in a particular model, and we plug in particular algorithms that get us from one side to the other and back. That can be done without reinventing the wheel every time. There's a lot of stuff we have. We have a lot of databases. We have a lot of approaches to modeling. We have a lot of efforts that are ongoing to develop standards, like the Combine community, which I think as we speak has its annual meeting in Madison, Wisconsin. There are a number of digital twin specific efforts. There is Glimprint, of course, the RDA working group. There's the EDITH project, Swedish Digital Twin Consortium. And a number of other things. And I think we need to build on those and need to focus where we go. So I want to end to just by sort of a bit of a reality check. And, ultimately digital twins need to be deployed. They need to be deployed in a setting like an ICU setting or a doctor's office or a healthcare office, various or by a drug company. And what we're mostly talking about here, and all the things that we're doing in our research group, they're incredibly far away from something on the tablet of this doctor. I guess looking at her coach is a nurse, in fact, but this healthcare professional to use. There's a, you talk to doctors and you say, well, how would you interact with a digital twin? How would you want to interact with a digital twin? And they would probably say it needs to be in the patient's chart, right? It needs to be built into Epic, for instance. And anybody who understands what that means realizes how far away we are from getting there. And that's in part why there are so few actual operational digital twins. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time. I don't know that we have time to ask and answer questions, but I'm happy to respond if you send me an email or want the slides. Thank you very much.